So I hear you want a new 3D Mario. If that means you're looking for a console-defining platformer with satisfyingly expressive movement, innovative mechanics that constantly evolve, and expertly crafted challenges that unleash the interactive potential between the two, then I'm beyond thrilled to share that Donkey Kong Bananza is all of that and so much more. Bananza is no mere side project from the team behind Super Mario Odyssey. It's a brilliant successor to that masterpiece, a tremendous reinvention for one of Nintendo's original mascots, a groundbreaking adventure in every sense of the word, and one of the best 3D platformers I've ever played. Bananza wonderfully honors DK's various incarnations over the decades while also fearlessly punching through a mountain to forge its own path. It tells a light but sweet story about DK and his spirited sidekick Pauline pursuing an underground legend that will allegedly grant them one wish. Pauline hopes to return home, while DK just wants more bananas. The deeper the pair dives toward the planet core, the deeper the gameplay becomes. Nintendo builds each new 3D Mario around one big idea like Sunshine's Water Pack or Odyssey's Captures. Mario is nowhere to be seen here, but in that same tradition, Bananza's fully destructible environments suit a hulking, rampaging gorilla far better than that plumber. And this exciting concept is truly fit for a Kong. Practically everything in this world is designed for DK to punch and break, and the extent to which Bananza commits to letting you tear through its environment is both technically impressive and a ton of fun. DK is powerful, and that's regularly reflected across a fresh set of abilities that are endlessly enjoyable to pull off. Simply tearing a chunk from the ground, which you can do almost anywhere, leads to so many dynamic possibilities. DK can hurl it at airborne enemies, swing it to break through walls, bounce off it to double jump, or surf on it to get around faster and safely cross dangerous terrain. When he's empty-handed, he can punch in any direction, slap the ground to instantly gather loose gold and reveal nearby collectibles, and perform a satisfying roll-jump-roll combo cut from the same cloth as Mario throwing Cappy and bouncing off him for extra distance. Plus, he takes a page out of Link's book and can climb basically any non-slippery surface, granting an extra sense of freedom to the entire journey. Crunchy sound effects that change depending on the material DK's interacting with make it even more entertaining to wreck stuff. Like the loud crumble of breaking down a sturdy wall of stone, or the juicy splash of tearing into a watermelon. The controls for doing all of this are so polished, too, and when you chain together a combo, everything sings in perfect harmony. Bananza's levels are called layers, and each one is a sprawling playground constructed to maximize the potential of DK's destructive abilities. There's so much to find both on their surfaces and tucked away in the hidden caves and tunnels you find by bashing your way through the environment. But Bananza rarely relies on mindless destruction for the sake of it. Instead, it excels at rewarding discoveries by way of smart destruction, and it's remarkable how intentional and well-designed its dense vertical layers are. Visual cues masterfully draw your eye to areas worth exploring, similar to how veteran Zelda players know to place a bomb in front of any suspicious cracks. See a tantalizing fossil embedded in the wall? Chuck an explosive boom rock at it, and there's a good chance you'll reveal a new path to explore. Sure, the open-world nature of these maps means you can occasionally happen upon a collectible by skipping the intended puzzle entirely and just carving a tunnel straight to it. But in my experience, it didn't happen that often. It fits with modern Nintendo trends seen in games like Tears of the Kingdom, where the designers don't care how you get from point A to point B as long as you have fun doing it. On the other hand, Bananza smartly walls off most of its main objectives behind terrain the nefarious Void Kong has turned indestructible, so it's not like DK can just punch his way straight to the end credits. What makes Bananza's objectives more compelling is that it isn't really about destroying everything. Instead, it's about exploring, platforming, fighting, and collecting in a vast world where you can destroy everything, which is an important distinction. It never feels like a gimmick or the only tool you have, but rather one integral part of Bananza's larger design. I was rarely asked to create random tunnels with no guidance, and DK's upgradable sonar ability helped me find buried collectibles hidden to the naked eye. Pauline helps out with the search too, as she sings to reveal waypoints to collectibles marked on your map. That keeps the hunt for completion focused and fun, even if the camera occasionally struggles with the weird angles you force it into when digging yourself a nice hole. Romping around the sublevels is a blast, and the fact that I felt totally in control of the action, even with so much fast-paced chaos unfolding at any given time, is an impressive feat. I love how the world crumbles around DK. It makes everything feel more alive and really sells the heft of this character, like the way he leaves a crater when crash landing after a lengthy fall. Every world has something unique to offer both visually and mechanically, from the freezer layer's icicles you have to knock down to create platforms, to the resort layer's liftoff ore that sends DK soaring. And Bananza never stops pulling fresh ideas off the vine. Without spoiling anything, I was stunned at the ingenuity on display as I dove to some of its late-game layers. There are tons of different material types that make up the world, with set rules to how they all interact. A simple example is how throwing ice onto lava creates a hardened rock platform, but the interplay between different elements gets more complex as you progress, and learning these relationships to solve increasingly smart puzzles is supremely gratifying. Those puzzles are often found in standalone challenge rooms scattered across each layer. There's a nice mix of fights, logic puzzles, and platforming sequences that offer a welcome change of pace from the open-ended explorable layers themselves. I was consistently impressed with how the challenges take full advantage of Bananza's systems. After more than 50 hours, I'm still finding new challenge rooms that mix and match enemies, materials, and abilities in brand new ways. One of my favorites is these boxes of blue and pink slime that are inverses of each other, where destroying one fills in the matching part of the other. Bananza builds several brilliant puzzles off this one idea and gets similar mileage out of every toy in its toy box, forcing me to think about something I'd already seen before in a new way. On its own, exploration is gratifying, but it helps that there are great rewards for finding Bananza's heaps of collectibles as well. Fossils are used to buy region-specific outfits that give you perks and a fun, fresh look. You'll also collect mountains of gold, and while I was swimming in cash for the first several hours, trust me when I say collecting as much as you can will be worth it in the end. But the main collectibles are the Banandium gems, which are comparable to Odyssey's power moons in that they're plentifully stashed around in places that are often challenging to reach. Unlike Odyssey, though, Bananza doesn't require you to gather a certain number of gems before moving on to the next area. Instead, collecting 5 earns DK a skill point, which can be used to upgrade his health, moves, and Bananza transformations. The skill tree doesn't have a ton of surprises, but it's nice knowing that grabbing a gem is always working toward a specific short-term goal. There are tons of gems to find too.
There's a banana!
I had found literally hundreds by the time I cleared the main story after 20 hours. I've spent 30 additional hours collecting hundreds more, and likely have several hours left to reach 100% completion. It's a massive undertaking, but with how enjoyable Bananza is, I'm not slowing down until I've collected every last one. It's easy to track your progress as well, with a helpful list of your gems in each layer, and this really cool 3D map that accurately reflects the current state of the terrain you've destroyed. Unfortunately, that map does occasionally suffer from minor frame rate drops, as does the rest of Bananza. The action generally stays at a solid 60 FPS, docked or handheld, but it can briefly dip below that when you're going crazy with the destruction. It's not great that we're already talking about any amount of performance issues on Nintendo's brand new console, but it's never too noticeable or distracting either. Besides, it's easier to forgive the occasional dropped frame when it's because so much beautiful chaos is happening at once. And the ambition of this fully interactable, destructible world is definitely worth that trade-off. Bananza really does look great, with expressive animations for DK himself, and colorfully detailed environments, NPCs, and enemies. It also constantly pulls inspiration from DK history, with fallen girders from the original Donkey Kong arcade game, and side-scrolling segments that reference classic Donkey Kong Country levels, including a lovely arrangement of Stickerbush Symphony that's just one tune in Bananza's awesome soundtrack. This may be from the 3D Mario team, but Bananza regularly pays respects to all of DK history, and at times feels like a modern follow-up to Rare's golden era from the Super Nintendo and N64. Some of the flashiest moments happen during DK's Bananza transformations, a variety of time-limited power-up states. Kong Bananza is essentially a souped-up version of DK, who can disintegrate harder materials you'd usually need a boom rock to break through. Zebra Bananza is all about speed, while Ostrich Bananza lets you glide through the air. The character designs are hilarious, and each Bananza is accompanied by a catchy tune performed by Pauline. They all feel fleshed out and great to control, and even better, you can instantly swap between them when you're powered up, giving you even more flexibility in how you want to tackle challenges. You can only enter a Bananza if you have enough Bananergy, but you'll pretty much always have enough. Admittedly, this can sometimes trivialize otherwise interesting puzzles in the overworld. For example, the puzzle to grab this gem surrounded by poison water can be entirely skipped by simply gliding to it. That fits with Nintendo's recent love of designing puzzles where any solution that works is a correct one, but Bananergy is so plentiful that using transformations can occasionally feel cheap compared to the fun of actually figuring an obstacle out. I was usually able to restrain myself from using these overly streamlined options, but if you were unable to resist Tears of the Kingdom's convenient but boring hoverbike, I could see them being a dangerous temptation. The sheer power of Bananzas also come into play during the boss battles, which all have exciting designs, like this giant squid made up of dozens of smaller ones that looks ripped straight from Splatoon. The decision to give the big bads a traditional health bar instead of using the expose the weak spot, hit it, and repeat 3 times Mario template fits DK's brawler-focused style perfectly. Still, thanks to the Bananza powers, I defeated some of newcomer Grumpy Kong's creations in less than 30 seconds. That said, the late-game bosses put up much more of a fight, so it does eventually right the ship in that regard. Regardless, it's still fairly simple to reach the end credits if that's all you're looking to do. As with most Nintendo games, much of the enjoyment comes from surprise, delight, and poking around for secrets rather than white-knuckle difficulty. That's not a complaint, given how fantastic the mechanics are, and how many optional challenges Bananza presents off the beaten path for veteran players who want more to sink their teeth into. And the gloves truly come off after the unforgettable finale of the story, with plenty of post-game content that continues to push you in more extreme, exciting ways. The leader of the bunch is finally back to kick some tail in Donkey Kong Bananza, a brilliant successor to Super Mario Odyssey, and a smashing return for a classic Nintendo character. It was a bold choice to build the Switch 2's first 3D platformer around DK instead of Mario, but it's proven to be the best decision Nintendo could have made. DK's satisfying, expressive movement and powerful, dynamic abilities create a truly groundbreaking adventure. The ambitious, destructible layers of this underground world are densely packed with satisfying collectibles, abundant charm, and clever challenges that never seem to run out of smart ideas, even long after the credits have rolled. Bananza is a constant crescendo across its 20-hour campaign and beyond, with puzzle platforming concepts that only grow richer as DK and Pauline dive deeper toward the planet core. Every element comes together in complete harmony to create Nintendo's first Switch 2 masterpiece.
Executive Reviews editor Tom Marks here with Logan Plant, our reviewer of Donkey Kong Bananza, to talk a little bit more about his platforming tastes, all of that. If you've probably seen Logan around, especially if you've been following our Switch 2 coverage. Logan reviewed Mario Kart World for us, also Donkey Kong Country Returns HD before that, so no stranger to this ape. First, let's talk about what are just some of your favorite 3D platformers, and what do you look for in the genre?
Yeah, well, obviously the 3D Mario games is my favorite 3D platforming series. Odyssey specifically is my favorite 3D Mario game. I also love Galaxy 2 and 3D World, so more of a fan of some of the more recent 3D Marios. But I think what I look for in a 3D Mario and a 3D platformer in general is like really expressive movement that kind of allows for a lot of possibilities. Like Mario can backflip and wall jump and triple jump and do all these different things, and Donkey Kong can do that too. That's a big thing that you just heard me praise. And then outside of Mario, I really like the Spyro trilogy. I like the remake that they did of that a few years ago, and I really enjoy the whole Astrobot series. I was there early with the original Astro on PSVR. That game is amazing. I think that is my favorite VR game ever, and the things it does with 3D platforming in VR is really cool, and then Astrobot last year was really great too.
If you had to pick between mechanics or level design, what do you think is more important in terms of, obviously they're both important, but
yeah,
what do you think is kind of wins out in your mind of really great levels but simple mechanics, or really interesting mechanics but fairly simple levels?
Yeah, I think I like the really interesting mechanics side of it. I think that's why I prefer something like Odyssey and Bananza to Astrobot. Astrobot has amazing spectacle and really great levels, but his mechanics themselves is mostly running and jumping and hovering. But sure, Donkey Kong ripping chunks out of the ground and beating them against a wall and rolling off a ledge. There's so many options and choices, and this might be a cop-out, but the best is when they come together and those levels are designed around those mechanics, which is what stuff like Odyssey and Bananza does so well.
let's talk about Donkey Kong now more specifically. Obviously, I assume you're a fan of the Donkey Kong games, so what do you like about those specifically as well?
Yeah, Tropical Freeze is my favorite 2D platformer of all time. I think that is just incredible level design, really nail-biting difficulty, really cinematic, almost Uncharted-like set pieces at times, and I think that the Donkey Kong Country games, what's so cool about them is how immersed you feel in the world itself. Like Donkey Kong Country, every platform is a part of the world. It's built into the background somehow. Mario just has floating blocks and platforms everywhere. Whatever, it's Mario, it doesn't matter, but Donkey Kong's world design is kind of a step above the rest, and I've always found that really cool. Plus, the difficulty and the movement in Donkey Kong Country games has always stood out, and the music, really classic atmospheric soundtrack, so I love the Donkey Kong Country games, and Bonanza's close, but it definitely leans more Mario than Donkey Kong, I would say.
So let's talk about the big elephant score in the room, which is that you gave this game a 10, and this is not only your first 10 you have ever given for IGN, but also the first 10 of 2025, and the first 10 we've given in over a year. Just a peek behind the curtain, we don't really think about that when we are assigning scores to each game, right? Like, we're not doling these out in a limited number, we don't have a quota to hit, there's nothing like that. We take them game at a time, and if the reviewer thinks a game deserves it, then that's what gets it. But this is, I imagine for you, there was still a bit of weight behind it, because my first 10 I gave to Celeste, and then my second, the only other 10 I've given was to Tears of the Kingdom. So there is a weight, at least for me. How did you feel about giving your first 10?
Oh yeah, I don't give 10s lightly. Like, I think I'm fairly critical in a lot of respects, and so for something to kind of cross that threshold to get a 10, which doesn't mean it's perfect, right? I outlined multiple issues with Bonanza in the review,
sure.
But to just cross that...
And notably, in our score scale, 10 means masterpiece, it does not mean perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And so Bonanza got there for me just because, for so many reasons, but really it made me feel a certain way that games haven't since Tears of the Kingdom or since Super Mario Odyssey, two games that we have given 10s out of 10. There are moments in here that are so special and so incredible, and some of the best moments in Nintendo history. I just think the pure idea of this platformer that I was a little worried initially was going to be just about breaking walls and punching your own tunnels and kind of Minecrafting your way through a Donkey Kong world, how curated it is and how smart its tunnels are designed. And you see a piece of gold on the wall, you punch it, it reveals a tunnel, it guides you through. It's almost like the developer's hand guiding you like in a Metroidvania at times. It's so smart, and I've played this game for over 50 hours at this point. I filed my review to you after 40, and I just kept playing to kind of lock in that 10 in my head. And the more I'm thinking about it, it's like, man, if I don't give this a 10, I don't think there's anything I could ever get a 10, because the bar would just be too high. Like, this game is so special and so cool, and such a groundbreaking, pun intended, start for Donkey Kong, kind of after 10 years away from the spotlight. It's amazing, and I love it so dearly. I think I might like it more than Super Mario Odyssey, which is a huge statement for me. That's one of my favorite games of all time. So yeah, I lost sleep over the score. I definitely was weighing between a 9 and a 10 for a time, but I try to go through the months and months of discourse that's to come in my head on my own as I'm writing this review. Like, okay, you got to go through the cooldown period, you got to go through the heat back up period, and then yeah, this is where I landed. It's one of my favorite games ever.
Well, Logan, thank you so much for digging a little bit more into your platformer tastes, your Donkey Kong tastes, all that good stuff. If you want to hear Logan talk even more about Donkey Kong Bananza in a little bit more depth, we had an episode of Nintendo Voice Chat, our Nintendo podcast that Logan hosts, going up at the exact same time as this review, that you can go and watch a longer discussion, really digging into this game. On top of that, if you want more Switch 2 stuff, like I mentioned at the top, Logan has reviewed Mario Kart World. You can go check out his review of that, or you can go check out my own review of the Switch 2 itself. We have all of that and more about the Switch 2 coming up. So for everything Nintendo, games, whatever, stick with IGN.